Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel and happy Tumblr Tuesday. For those of you who are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Felicia, owner and maker of Alleri's Craft Closet, and today I'm going to show you how I created this super cute, fun candy heart mason jar tumbler with this 3D topper. As always, all of the products I use will be linked in the description box below. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. I am using a mason jar that I got from New England Glitter. I'm going ahead and using some painter's tape just to tape off this top rim so this way it does not get any spray paint or epoxy on it. I'm going to go ahead and use my 2x Rust-Oleum white and paint and primer spray paint. Give this a few coats of white spray paint and then I'm going to let it dry for about 30 minutes. Then I'm going in with 10 milliliters of Speedy Petey's Fast Set Epoxy, and I'm applying this in a thin layer onto my mason jar here. I'm going to go ahead and be using the epoxy method to apply my glitters. Once I have my epoxy on, I'm going to let that spin for a few minutes while I get my glitter going. I'm using Rainbow Ice from New England Glitter, and I'm also using a little bit of Snow Caps from Glitter Chimp, which is a mica flakes. I'm going to go ahead and mix that together, and then I'm going to go ahead and start applying that to my tumbler, making sure that I have this glitter nice and evenly coated, making sure that I don't see any wet spots of that epoxy peeking through. I did add a little too much epoxy on here, so I did have to kind of go over it a few times with glitter just to make sure that I had no see-through dark spots on my tumbler. Once I was done with that, I put that on the turner and let that cure for 2 hours before going into my next layers of epoxy. I went ahead and did 2 layers of epoxy with sanding in between each layer before we were able to move on to the next step. I went ahead and I opened up my Cricut design space where I pulled in a design that I found off of the internet. I will have this linked below in the description box for you. I went ahead and grabbed a shapes out of my shapes feature and I went ahead and sliced that out. I needed to find that main heart shape inside to create my stencil for the hearts on the actual tumbler itself. I keep checking to make sure that my images are fitting perfectly together as I create my stencil offset for the first part of our tumbler. Once I create that thin black offset stencil, I go ahead and make sure that that fits together, and I layer those 3 together to make the next part of our decal, which is our writing for our candy hearts, which is the hug me, the kiss me, I love you, the call me, text me, so on and so forth. I sized down my hearts to 1.2 inches, which fits perfectly around my mason jar. I believe I used 12 hearts and then one for the bottom, so 13 altogether. So I go ahead and resize the offset part. So I have my stencil, which is the heart on the right, and then the offset, which is the heart with the other line, this double line in it. Go ahead and start creating my text words. I use the basic Cricut sands and I colored it red so you guys could see here, and I put that yellow heart back there so you guys can kind of see it together. Once I do that, I make sure I get rid of that yellow heart. We no longer need that, and I just cut out the stencil heart that I'm taking off now and then the offset. I start applying my hearts onto my tumbler in the number 5 shape pattern, and it gives me enough space around my tumbler evenly. Once all my decals are on, I go ahead with my fingers and just make sure I really push down those decals so there's no lifting. I go in with orange sherbet, sunshine, topaz, sour apple, ballerina, and purple rain with New England glitter. And I'm using Eileen's Tack It to use that as my glue to adhere my glitter, and just a basic paintbrush. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my Tack It. I'm going to place a few droplets on all of the heart centers, and I'm just going to go ahead and fill all of those in. And then once I get done with that, I'm going to go ahead and take my heat gun and just dry that Tack It a little bit more, making sure that it is completely clear before I go ahead and start applying my glitters to my stencil outlines. Once my Tack It is dried, I'm going to go ahead and start applying all of my glitters to my mason jar, staying in the color coordinating hearts, making sure I spread out my colors evenly, trying not to make sure that there's colors that are touching or too close to each other. So I'm just going to go around the tumbler and start placing my colors where I want them to go. Once I was done applying all my glitters, I went ahead with my little bristle brush here and just brushed off all that excess glitter, making sure that it was all off before going into my second layers. As I was doing this and brushing off that extra glitter, I was seeing how that glitter was starting to lay flat to that Tack It, and it was creating a really pretty opal color shift, and I was absolutely loving it. So I decided that we were just going to full on go for the Tack It method. So I started rubbing that glitter nice and flat into that Tack It, revealing this really pretty opal color shift, which I was super excited about because it was more of a pastel, but it just, look at the shine and the opal and the color shift in it. It was just really pretty. So I decided, just, you know what, we're just going to go for it. After I was done doing that, I didn't like how translucent they still were. So I went in with a second coat of Tack It, went through all of my hearts, made sure I dried it again with my heat gun until the Tack It was clear, went and second coated all of my hearts, and then re-rubbed the glitter into that Tack It, and then brushing it off again. So I'm going to go ahead and let this play so you guys can see me apply that second layer of Tack It. Now that I have my second layer, I'm just brushing off all of that excess glitter, getting it off. And look at that color shift opal. Oh, I'm obsessed with it. Absolutely love it. I'm going to go ahead and start removing that stencils around the heart as we no longer need those, as we're going to go ahead and start getting ready to go into our next layers of epoxy. Once I go ahead and remove all those decals, I give it a good brush through just to get all that excess glitter off that is not supposed to be there. And I go ahead and throw this on the turner, where I will mix up 20 milliliters of Speedy Petey's Fast Set Epoxy, which you all know is my absolute favorite epoxy. It is the only epoxy that I will use. I go ahead and mix 20 milliliters of that, and I go ahead and put that on my mason jar. I just do one thin coat just so this way we can apply our next set of decals without having to worry about pulling up any of that glitter and that tacket. Go ahead and use my heat gun to make sure I pop any of my bubbles. Once that is done, I go ahead with my sanding block and give it a good sand down just to make sure I remove any pokey bits or anything that's in there or on there that I don't want to be on there. And not only that, it's giving me a nice matte surface to adhere my decals to, which I really needed, as these are really small letters and I just want to make sure that they really stick to this tumbler really well without any lifting with the epoxy. Once I'm done sanding, I go ahead and take some alcohol and a coffee filter and just wipe down my tumbler, getting all of that debris and sanding off of my tumbler. Go ahead and start cutting up my decals. We are now going to start applying the offset to our candy hearts. Once we have all those stencils on, I go around the tumbler with my finger and just make sure that they are all on there really well. Now we're going to go ahead and start applying our little phrases to our candy hearts as well. These I weeded out on regular vinyl and I cut it on washi tape vinyl. And of course, the Cricut machine ate the crap out of my letters, and it took me about 45 minutes to have to peel letters off that were sticking to each other. So that was a good time, but like I said, it was well worth it. So another reason why I wanted to make sure that my tumbler was really sanded down and matte, so this way I can have good adhesion with these stencils vinyl to the tumbler, since I had to peel them so many times off of the actual vinyl sheet to place them. I did go ahead and make sure that once I had all of these on there, I did go ahead and coat this with polyacrylic and a paintbrush, going over all of the words just to make sure that they were really sealed in there, so when I did apply my epoxy, I didn't have any issues with lifting. While that was drying, I went ahead and moved into making our 3D topper. I went ahead and I purchased these faux ice from Michaels. I'll make sure these are listed down below. And I went ahead and just kind of placed them around the top rim of my mason jar lid just to give me an idea of what I needed. And I'm going in with my Brisa inks, and I'm using, I believe, magenta and rose. And I just split the ice up into 2 different cups and squirted some of the alcohol ink in there. And just took a popsicle stick and really mixed it around, coating that ice and letting that alcohol ink really stain the ice. Went ahead and I did that for a few minutes, going back and forth, just making sure I added you know, more alcohol inks if I needed to. I really wanted these to be really pigmented, so I added a little bit more. So I went ahead and I mixed those, and then I put those aside to let them kind of absorb in the alcohol ink and dry. And I got these really two pretty pink colors that I think will go great for the topper of this lid. So then I'm going to go ahead and grab my mason jar lid. I'm going to go ahead and grab my sanding block and just scuff up the top of my lid here, just giving it a nice scuff surface so it gives my UV resin and stuff a better adherence. And I just make sure I wipe down with some rubbing alcohol. I go ahead and put the straw into the lid topper. However, I didn't really need the straw in there quite yet, but you want to make sure that you continuously use your straw and put it through the hole to make sure that where you're placing your ice, you're not covering up that hole or interfering with the straw in any way. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm using my UV resin and my cute little curing light. I'll make sure that I post these down below where I got these from. So I went ahead and I just removed the straw out of there after I realized that, like, yeah, I don't need that in there quite yet. And I'm going to go ahead and start just pushing that UV resin around that lid with my little squeegee silicone tool here. As you can see to the side, there are some hearts here. I have a whole section of me making those, and I did not like them. I didn't like them on the topper. I know that the video picture shows them on there, but I actually took them off because I didn't like them. They were just too corny for me, so do what you will with them. They were just an idea. I didn't like the way that I made them. I was really, really tired when I started to make them, and it just... I'm one of those people, like, when I start to get tired, I just need to stop for the night and be done, because that's when mistakes happen or when I don't like things and it's just more of a waste of time. So needless to say, I will not be adding that part into this tutorial. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start placing these faux ice around the lid, making sure that I keep away from that center hole where my straw goes. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of mix them around and put them the way that I like them and think that they best fit. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my UV light, and we're going to go ahead and set them into place. I went ahead and did this for 60 seconds. Once that is cured, I go through and just tap it, make sure there's no loose ones in there. Then I start building my second layer of where I want my ice gems to go, keeping in mind that straw hole and that I got to make sure that I don't block it. Go ahead and I put my straw through the hole a few times and place those gems just to make sure that they're not going to interfere with not being able to get my straw in, because that would be a really big bummer if I got this done and realized that, hey, you didn't leave enough room for your straw hole. As you can see here, I'm fiddle-faddling with those hearts, but we don't have to worry about those because I decided not to show them to you because they looked corny AF. Like, I'm not even joking you. So again, I go ahead with a little paintbrush here and I just start placing globs of my UV resin, just trying to control where it goes. So this way I don't have to worry about, UV resin getting into the hole or anywhere I don't want it. And I just cure those, flash cure them for 30 seconds, 10 seconds at a time, just to have them stick. And then I go through at the very end and I flash cure the whole entire lid for like 3 minutes. So I'm just going to go through here, let it play so you can see how I apply these other gems while holding the straw, just to make sure I don't lose my hole shape for my straw to go. Once I'm done placing my ice on my topper, I go ahead and cure it for 3 minutes. Then I go ahead and final coat my mason jar. I am using 20 milliliters of Speedy Petey's Fast Set Epoxy. Go ahead and apply this last layer to my mason jar. I go ahead and let this spin for a few minutes, and I go over it with my blowtorch, popping any bubbles I may not see. Go over it with a coffee filter and some alcohol around that topper, removing any acetone that may be on there, and it was done. I am so glad that I decided to give this a try. I've never done anything with a mason jar before or 3D topper lid, so I learned a lot during this tutorial and I hope you guys did too. I love the way that it's just super simple and easy and it gets straight to the point. It's obviously Valentine's Day. Let me know what you think about the 3D topper. Do you like the hearts? Do you think we should have done without the hearts? Let me know in the comments. But other than that, I absolutely love the way that it came out and I hope you guys did too. If you like this tutorial, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming tutorials. As always, see you again soon.